Pauline. I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Now, I've got the auditor coming in at 2 o'clock, so once we've concluded the other elements, we'll adjourn the meeting until 2. So it's item number, is it 24? So that's on page 659 on your second page.
Do we have to hold the Audit and Risk Committee meetings minutes over as well?
Sorry?
Do we have to hold 23 over as well?
Which one?
Item 23. And then we go with now.
Sorry, what's... Item 23 is the one that we need the auditor for.
Yeah,
This should be last time.
Is that right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the annual report. That's what we need the auditor for. So, 24, the Salt on the Pier restaurant lease assignment, a new term. Now, I'm going to get Raf, because you chaired the Strategy and Finance Committee meeting, I wasn't there, to introduce this, and I presume you'd like to move it.
Yeah, I'll move it.
And Jamie will second it. Right.
Okay, this came to the committee directly because staff were concerned that they had an inconsistent policy on granting lease assignments and extensions. What we had is an owner with about 2 years to run on their lease. They've been trying to sell the business for a number of years and haven't been able to find a buyer. They found a buyer, and the buyer would naturally like to have the lease assigned as part of the sales process, but also have an extension to the current lease. Commercially, that makes a lot of sense, and that's obviously up to the landlord, which is us. We don't have a very clear policy on this. Generally, we prefer leases to run to their end, and then we put it out for public tender. But there are several examples of where we have extended a lease before expiry. And staff have asked for some guidance. I've asked them to come back with a new policy which provides consistency and guidance. That will come to the next Strategy and Finance meeting. So prior to that, obviously, we've got to make a decision on this. The committee discussed the pros and cons of extending the lease and the lease assignment and found in favour of doing that. The current tenant wants to get out. There's a new tenant who wants to get in, looks excited. And I think we felt that it provides certainty to the community, and that's quite important at this time. It saves councils the costs of having to go out for a new tender in 2 years' time. And actually there was nobody else who had any interest in taking over the business. Some felt there were some issues around the process, that there wasn't enough, I guess, public engagement. Those who found in favour of it thought actually there was a very thorough sales process, and that qualified for the public piece of that. So we voted to approve that the council could progress with the buyer to work out the terms of a new lease, which would obviously be on current leasing practices and obviously current market values for that lease. So we've left that for staff to get on with. So that's where we ended up.
And you've asked staff to come back with a specific policy
yes.
direction
Yes.
to assist them
Yes.
in future situations
Yeah.
because of the inconsistency of the decision making.
Yes, and general discussions with staff and with people in the leasing business suggest that actually we'll probably come back with a policy which will allow for some flexibility as you get close to the end of a lease. But we just need some clarity for staff so that they know exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Now, look, I'd like to take the two ward councillors first, if I may, and then I'll come to you, Pauline. So, Glenn, David.
Sure. Over questions? Or
Yeah, or just commentary, or
Short commentary.
yeah, because
Okay.
I mean, I think a lot of questions have been asked and answered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I do see the other cases that have been made and put through council over leases in various wards. I cannot see a reason why not we would proceed with this. The Salt in the Pier is considered one of the shining lights in New Brighton, economically, socially. In fact, this is more than extending a lease in my view. This is actually answering serving the ends of local government over the four well-beings. It's not just a commercial decision, it's much wider than that. So I encourage the council to support this. I agree with Councillor Manji. Obviously we do need to have a policy that does have some flexibility.
Yeah. Dave?
Thank you. Yes, likewise, I'm very supportive of this recommendation. It's an unusual situation that council finds itself in periodically with these sorts of leases, where there's a short-term lease left, a buyer comes along and naturally wants more than just the couple of years that's left on the lease. So I think it's been well elucidated this morning that we've had a number of other instances where this has occurred, and I think in the case of commercial activity in New Brighton, this is one success story of a complex that's worked very well. It's a well patronised and well loved venue in New Brighton, and I think for us to go through a procurement process on this would really just be another slap in the face for the eastern suburbs community, and I think it makes absolute sense to go ahead and as the committee have recommended.
Pauline and then Andrew.
Oh, well, actually, I was just going to ask a question about, do you know how long it's been for sale, approximately? Is it a number of years?
I know he has, the current owner has tried to sell it over the last couple of years, probably.
Because to me, if that's the case, then we have satisfied the principles of giving opportunity to others in respect of the public asset. They've had an opportunity, people have had an opportunity to pick
They
this up.
tested the market once, Pauline, and it didn't sell, but they've managed to get a buyer in this instance.
So they have been
and it's
trying.
obviously, it's conditional to us extending the lease so they have a business to sell.
And so to me, I think that that's given the opportunity for others to come in and have a go at this as a public asset, which is what we like to try and provide in our procurement. So I'm quite happy with the recommendation.
Yeah. Andrew?
I totally understand the commercial considerations here. I mean, as someone who has had experience both as a commercial landlord and as a commercial tenant, I'm very familiar with the way that the assignment of these leases works and the way that the extensions or the granting of a new lease would work in these sort of situations as well. I'm also very aware firsthand of the way that a value of a business can diminish when a lease comes to its end, and therefore there's insecurity for a new buyer over what's going to happen when that lease ends, which inevitably has got an implication for the value of the business. Certainly also very aware of the commercial consideration of looking after our own tenant in one of our buildings, and the reputational risk, I guess, to council of the way that we conduct our business of leasing these facilities to tenants. They're all the sort of things I would say if we were a commercial board, and I almost certainly would be happy to grant both the assignment and the new lease if we were a commercial board on that basis. But the reality remains that we're not a commercial board, and there's a public policy consideration comes into play here as well. Now, we need to make sure, and that's the reason why we have a procurement policy, that we get good outcomes not only for the facility, but also the way the facility adds value to the community from a social aspect, and that we get the best outcome for ratepayers as well as communities as well. So at the committee, I certainly took a very strong stance that the public policy, the policy that we have around the way that we deal with these assets, should be the thing that we were absolutely wedded to, and we should let that take precedence over the commercial needs, in this case of the landlord, of the current tenant and the future tenant. So the assignment of the lease I didn't have a problem with. It was the extension of the lease or the granting of the new term that I did have a problem with. And I would make the point here as well that going out for a commercial sale and purchase process of a business is quite different than going through a procurement process to initiate a new lease. However, We've had the benefit of input today from the 2 ward councillors, and we've also had the benefit overnight of the answers to some questions that have been put to staff in relation to this specific case. And I'm happy to defer to the wishes of the ward councillors. They know New Brighton far better than I do. And if the right outcome for New Brighton is that we not only assign this lease, but we also grant that new lease, then I'm happy in this case for that to occur. But realising that once again, we're making an exception to a policy, and one where there are a number of recent exceptions that have been made, quite high profile extensions, and where there are some others where we haven't made the same extension. So we're looking at some real inconsistencies here, and that's the reason that I'm very pleased to hear that we will review this policy in the near future so that we can then get some consistency in this space. If we've got a policy that we're consistently making exceptions to, then that suggests that we need to consider how appropriate that policy actually is. So despite I spoke strongly against this at the committee and went with the staff recommendation, in fact, there, I'm happy to do what I'm told is the best for New Brighton and let this proceed, but really only in the context of knowing that we've got that policy review coming up.
Yanni?
Thank you. So I just want to be clear that what we're proposing is not just one inconsistency. This is not like the other ones that have been done in the past, and here's why. Because it's not just one dealing unilaterally with the assignee and extending the lease. It's taking away this report going to the local community board. It's delegating away from council and community board signing off on the lease. And it is not going through that procurement policy. So there's actually 3 inconsistencies with this report. We're a council that's talked about giving more to community boards, encouraging community boards to be involved. And we heard the comment that if we don't agree to this, it's a slap in the face to the community. Actually, I think it's not fair to the local community board to simply deviate from the standard processes we have for involving them in these decisions. And all of those other ones, as I understand it, went through community boards. In fact, just recently, we were discussing the new Hallswell Library Cafe, and that report had come through the community board with recommendations to us as a council. So actually, it's not a minor thing here. Actually, it's quite, I think, symbolic of whether we trust community boards to be involved in these processes. And if we do, then we should actually allow them to participate, not exclude them from that. I think there's interesting things. For example, we haven't done an updated valuation. So the last valuation was done over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So I kind of had a question of staff of when we'd do a new valuation. I don't know whether staff can answer that today. There's a number of questions in here which staff have actually put in, and I know some of the other problems we've had in the past with these hospitality operations has been the suitability of the operators and people, I guess, operating and then running into financial difficulties. So you've got a bit of comment on that in here in terms of the assignment.
Sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
Well, just in terms of going from an operator that's got a lot of hospitality experience to an operator that has none, and what the risks are for us, based on, I guess, previous experience that we've had with other places.
Okay, well, the assignee has put forward a pretty solid business plan. They're essentially looking to retain the current arrangement with a few improvements. Just on your comment regarding the rents and the new lease, there would be a valuation sought, so those terms are yet to be defined. But we aren't recommending a new lease.
So the staff's view is not a new lease, but the committee's view is to extend the lease?
Yep.
So I'm presuming in the nature of the conversation that that'll probably be carried, the committee recommendation will be carried.
Yep.
So as part of that process, will you get a new valuation?
Yes.
And that could quite considerably change the
to market rates.
Right.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm concerned about is the risk of someone purchasing a property or a business, but not knowing what the outgoings would be in terms of the rent, because we haven't been through that process.
Surely the staff have gone through all this, and we've had our reports from the staff over their negotiations, and I don't think we should be...
This is why I tried to go straight to the debate, because the issues have been well canvassed, the questions have been asked and answered. It's been through a committee process. but I wasn't at the committee process.
Well, I can remind you what happened at the committee.
A perfectly valid question was asked, which was, which I didn't give people an opportunity to ask, and it wasn't asked, was there going to be a new valuation done? We've had the answer yes, so if we could come to a conclusion in your contribution.
So what I'm interested in is minimising the risk to us as a council if the committee recommendation goes ahead. Now, I can remind you what happened at the committee. There were comments made around the advice that we had coming from Muppets, from not being...
No, I was talking about the councillors, not the staff.
Hey,
You know,
excuse me, I wasn't at the meeting, but I have had reported to me certain elements of the meeting, and we do not need to traverse behaviours here that are unacceptable around a council table. Now, just carry on, come to a conclusion.
So what I'm trying to understand, like, what my concern is, right, is that if you assign this lease and the sale goes ahead, and yet the market valuation that we do comes up with quite a different rent structure, then the person that's acquired the business at the price that they've acquired it then is faced with a kind of uncertainty around being able to meet those, whatever those rent levels may be. So how do we mitigate that from a risk point of view? Because we do have cases where we've got people that are in some of our facilities who are behind in their rent, who are struggling because for whatever reason, and so to me that's a real risk.
Yeah, well, look, we would look to work out a new set of terms with the assignee for the new lease before their business transaction takes place.
Yeah.
So they would know exactly what they're getting into before they purchase the business.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
So, Jamie and then Paul.
Yeah, look, I think it's been well traversed, and I'm glad to hear the councillors both in the ward see the value in this. I think the reality is, not I'm disagreeing with what Yanni's saying, but the crux of this is, do we crash a sale for a really good business to a really good new owner, or do we just let them get on with their lives? It's quite significant for them. I think Luke's done an exceptional job on this. I actually knew him before he was actually at council and worked for a commercial property company. We're very lucky to have him. But I think what hamstrings us is that we don't have a policy around this. And I'm not envious of staff trying to come up with one because I don't know how you deal with it. And I talked about this at the committee, but the nature of business and property is that it is a dynamic environment. The old adage of you don't know what you don't know could not be more true to this industry because stuff just crops up. And at the end of the day, the value of this business is actually in the lease. There's clues in the name. It's called Salt on the Pier. So if they're not on the pier, they don't have a business. You can't get the better part of $500,000 for a couple of cans of soda and a deep fryer. So they do need to actually have this business here. This happens all the time, in all honesty. And the only reason that we had the recommendation that we did is because we are slightly hamstrung by this policy. So I think it's a good opportunity for councillors to do actually what our job is to come in and bring a human and commercial element to it and try and pass some judgment that's in the best interests of the community to help make Christchurch a better place. And I think having an intelligent conversation with our tenants to say, of course we'll be a good landlord, of course we'll come to the party, you have run your business very well, you've contributed well to New Brighton, you've had a change of circumstances, you're looking at selling your business, we don't want to stand in the way of that. There's a great new operator that's coming in and continuing your good work, and we only want to enable that. I stood on a platform saying I'm here on council trying to find ways that things can happen, not find ways that they can't, and I think this is pragmatic, it's logical, it's common sense, and I think it's combining a good community outcome actually with a pragmatic and sensible commercial outcome as well. So very supportive of the committee recommendation.
Paul.
Look, I'm really glad that this is being dealt with today in the way it's been dealt with and the strong opposition from both sides, because since I've been on council and with a number of leases we've seen, commercial or otherwise, coming to the council and the inconsistencies they actually show, I'm really pleased that this has brought it to a head where we can actually now look at the policy and get it sorted out once and for all, so we actually can go forward in a consistent manner. However, I am taking the local councillors' points of view, and I want to support the recommendation, but only, again, like Councillor Turner, in light the fact that we are going to get a consistent policy, and from here on in we can actually apply that consistently on all other leases going forward.
All right. I will put the motion. Oh, we've got it moved and seconded. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no.
No.
Yanni O'Henson opposed. And that's carried. Thank you. So I think that's all.